Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to the Valentine's Views podcast, your place for thoughtful discussion about the New York Giants. Please remember to subscribe, whether you're watching us on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Today, we're going to talk about Saquon Barkley, his contract situation, and what he might end up with, what the ultimate value for Saquon might end up with being, and what some of the issues are in terms of signing him to a long-term contract. And here to help me figure all of that out is Ted Nguyen of The Athletic. Ted, thank you very, very much for a few minutes.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
So one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on, you did a piece in The Athletic the other day that I found really, really interesting, and it really dives into running back value and specifically the value of Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, some of these guys that are trying to get paid right now. Just as an overview, let's start there. Just tell folks, if they haven't had a chance to read it, tell folks a little bit about what you found as you did that piece.
Yeah, just looking at running back value throughout the league, and talking to some really smart people as far as understanding the cap and the market. It just seems very unlikely that Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs or any back is going to get a market resetting deal, or even a deal that is same value as Ezekiel Elliott or Christian McCaffrey. Those guys got 16 mil per APY average per year. Just talking to people, it doesn't seem like that kind of deal is going to come around again for a long time. So Saquon has come out and he said he's not looking for a market resetting deal. I'm not sure what he's looking for. I think Josh Jacobs might be maybe a little more aggressive in what he's looking for, just based on his quotes about doing it for the future and doing it for running backs that is going to come after him. But it's just tough for running backs right now because whereas other positions will peak and enter their primes in their second contract, a lot of running backs are entering their prime years during their rookie years, and they fall off a cliff pretty quickly.
And I think that is one of the really interesting things. I think you mentioned in your piece, what was it that I think was it 17 running backs that had gone into, second contracts and gotten fairly large second contracts. And I think that by statistical measure, I think only 4 of them really actually panned out to be worth that second contract. I think that's the number that I read. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Arif Hansen, one of my ex-colleagues and still good friend, he looked at every running back contract signed since 2016 with an average annual value that's consumed at least 4% of the cap. So that's significant. And compared their production 2 years before signing and 3 years after signing. And only 4 out of 17 of those guys made good on those contracts. And that's not including Dalvin Cook, who was just recently cut after 2 years into his 5-year contract. And he's already showing signs of slowing down. He rushed for 1,000 yards last year, but if you look at some of the more advanced metrics, like his play speed, which is measured by microchip data, his run stuff percentage, like those things are near the bottom of the league. So he's already showing signs of decline at 27 years old, and that's just one of the reasons why it's tough to give these running back big deals, because they rarely are able to make good of them, because it's so hard to stay healthy at the running back position. And also you have market saturation. You have a lot of good running backs, a lot of, even if you don't have an elite running back, a good running back might be able to produce at very high levels in the right situations. And that just doesn't happen very often in other position groups.
And it's interesting. I'm curious for your take on what you think Saquon Barkley is. I was looking at some of the advanced metrics, some of which are in your piece. 19th out of 69 running backs in explosiveness, 16th out of 64 in play speed, which are good numbers, but maybe not elite numbers. You mentioned the fact that he doesn't break a lot of tackles. He doesn't necessarily gain a ton of, yards above what might be expected if you look at Football Outsiders. And another number that you have in here is 54th out of 70 in rushing elusiveness. And I look at it and I think you can use numbers, you can use his yardage and his number of carries. You can use numbers to say he's a great back. You can also use these numbers to say that in a lot of ways he's a replacement level running back. So I'm just curious, where you stand on what Saquon Barkley is.
Yeah, when I look at these numbers, I don't just say, I don't just take these numbers and make a black and white judgment on these running backs. I see them kind of in tiers. So, if you're in a very good tier in rushing elusiveness, then I consider you good, but I wouldn't be looking at the rankings too much like, oh, he's 10th and this guy's 11th, just because, I wouldn't go that exact, but I would say Barkley's a very explosive back. He's a very fast back. But he's poor at breaking tackles, and that shows up in the film too. When I watched him, especially at the end of the year, he was, a lot of the first tacklers was able to get him down. But if he has space, he's fast enough to outrun angles, and he's fast enough to hit the big plays, and he's also a receiving threat. So I would say I would still consider Saquon an elite back, but I would be afraid that he had a major knee injury. He's had some nagging injuries. I would just be afraid of where his cliff might be, especially if you're going to give him a 4-year, 3-4 year contract.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where I think you hit on it earlier, and the fact that running backs tend to be most productive over the course of their first contract. So, and you in the NFL, it's hard to pay guys for what they did for you before because it's a cap league. So I don't know. I mean, do you find this to be a difficult spot for the Giants to be in?
Yeah, I find it extremely difficult because it's Saquon's a respected leader on the team. I think he made a big impact on the Giants' offense last year, especially when the early portion of the season when it was his rushing that was really getting the offense going. And I think he's a hard worker, and there's a human side to this too. Like you can't just treat one of your leaders like giving him, franchise tagging him year after year and just expecting him to just be a good soldier and just, do that for your team and sacrifice his body. So there's a human element to it. You want to give him a long-term contract and, make him happy and give him some security. But at the same time, like you can't hurt your cap space and put yourself in a bad position later on. So it's a very difficult balance to, which is why we're here right now.
Right.
If a player was, considered elite in any other position, I don't think they'd be in Barkley's position right now, just, trying to play on this franchise tag.
Yeah, I think the Giants, Joe Shane made it obvious from the very beginning of the offseason. He made it obvious that he was going to prioritize the quarterback over the running back. And some Giants fans still get upset because they say Barkley's a better player than Daniel Jones. And yet I've said, look, quarterback is more important than running back. If you think you have one or you think the guy you have might turn into one, you have to take care of that guy first and you take care of other things later. I'm just curious if you believe that from a philosophical standpoint that idea of let's take care of the quarterback first and then deal with Saquon, deal with Dexter Lawrence, deal with the other guys later was the right move for the Giants to make.
Yeah, I think so. I think just based on history, and we talked about the recent history of even long-term contracts with running backs, it makes sense to prioritize the quarterback first. Obviously, it's the most important position in the NFL, and Daniel Jones showed some real signs of improvement last year. And there's a debate to whether you should pay quarterbacks that are kind of I wouldn't say Daniel Jones is elite, and I think he had good moments last year. But there's some analytics guys and some guys that might consider, not being in quarterback purgatory. I mean, I think there's a chance Daniel Jones might take another step up this year, but if he's playing on the same level or around the same level as last season, then you're still kind of in quarterback purgatory. And you gave this guy a long-term contract, and I'm not sure the details of the contract if there's outs later in case he does regress. But prioritizing the idea of prioritizing the quarterback is obviously a sound idea. But whether or not Daniel Jones is that quarterback will remain to be seen. But I am encouraged by what we've seen from him last year.
Yeah, I think the Giants, the way that contract is structured, it's really, 4 years, 160 million on paper, but it's really 2 years and 81, 82, whatever that guaranteed money is. I don't think there's any fully guaranteed money after the second year. So to me, it's a 2 year. Let's see how much more there is, a 2 year window for the Giants to see how much more there is with Jones. And if there isn't more, then you move on.
Yeah, so I think those are two sound ideas: idea of prioritizing the quarterback and also giving you outs as far as a quarterback that is not 100% sold to you on being that guy just yet.
Right. So Ted, let's talk a little bit about value. We don't know. Reportedly, Saquon's turned down contracts of 12 and a half, maybe 13 million, average annual value. Says he's not looking to reset the market, but there's not a lot of room between 13 and, Christian McCaffrey at 16, I think, is the top of the market. So do you get the sense, first of all, that really what this comes down to for Saquon is how much money the Giants might or might not be willing to guarantee him over the course of, whatever, if it's a 3-year, 4-year deal, whatever it turns out to be? Do you get that sense? I know that I do.
I think so. I think it's, when you look at contracts and you look at the average per year, none of it really matters if it's a bunch of funny money at the end of the deal that they could just cut you and not pay you. So I'm pretty sure it has to do with guarantees and how much the Giants are willing to give throughout the length of the contract.
And the franchise tag, if the Giants were to play hardball with him and push him, and he ended up playing on the tag for 2 years, I think he would be guaranteed a little bit more than 22 million over those 2 years. When I talked to Joel Corey, cap expert over at CBS, I mean, he basically said that really what you have to start with is you have to start from the 22 million in guarantees and go from there, because he's not going to agree to anything less than the 22 million. And what I have thrown out there, and I just kind of want your thoughts on what you think is a fair deal, based on what you've heard and what the people you've talked to. I've thrown out the idea of 3 years, 39 million, with the first 2 fully guaranteed, which would give him 26 guaranteed. That I think that's a sweet spot, or at least a spot where they could start talking in that range. I mean, what do you think is a fair deal or a sweet spot for a deal for Saquon?
Yeah, to me, that's exactly it. 13 average per year, 2 years guaranteed. And like you said, that guarantees him more than he would get on playing on 2 franchise tags. And that falls in line with basically the people I talk to. I think, 13 average per year is where the top of the market running backs are going to make for a little while, I think.
And I look at it, the other thing I look at is I think Christian McCaffrey, who's at the top of the market, I think McCaffrey's got just barely more than $30 million in guaranteed money. And I think, maybe there's a little bit more wiggle room to get Saquon a little bit closer to 30, but that's a hard argument to make, because as good as Saquon's been, I think McCaffrey's been better.
Yeah,
So
there's no doubt.
yeah, so I think, and I would be nervous if I'm the Giants because of a lot of the reasons that you laid out, in your piece. I would be nervous about going beyond 3 years and going beyond 2 fully guaranteed years. I don't know how you would feel about that.
Yeah, to me, I feel the same way. I think 2 years guaranteed from a team perspective is good. I think, yeah, but like I said, with Barkley, I'm just afraid of where the cliff is because I think to me he's a back that relies on his athleticism a little bit more than a guy like Josh Jacobs. So that cliff could come quickly, but I would think he's earned a 2 year guarantee.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just wonder, Saquon keeps talking about wanting respect. And
Hmm.
I wish I knew what his definition of respect is, because from my perspective, from my viewpoint, I think that 2 years fully guaranteed, 26 million's a nice bump above the 22, and I think that's the second most guaranteed money into a running back, probably of all time. I'm not sure that Ezekiel Elliott had more guaranteed money than that in his deal.
Yeah,
I don't have
I
it. Yeah,
don't.
I don't have it. I don't have it in front of me, but I think at least right now it would be second in both average annual value and in guarantees to McCaffrey.
Yeah, I mean that'd be a pretty sweet deal. But I think it's hard for running backs in general to look at every other position and see deals that just keep topping each other as far as APY, and then having to come back and learn that, we have to take these lesser deals. We can't even match these top of the market deals because of what teams have learned about the position and the longevity of the position overall.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. Tiki Barber on his radio show the other day said something that, considering that Tiki's a running back, considering that I know how he feels about Saquon, he said, I can't sit here and tell you that the Giants would be worse without Saquon Barkley. And I'm not sure I agree with that, but it speaks volumes just about how people who really know the game feel about the position.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't agree with that because I do think he does make the Giants a better team because of his explosiveness, and again, I think he has really good receiving ability, which you want to look at for with elite backs. Um, and I think, yeah, it's tough to gauge exactly where the value of an elite running back is. I will say that there have been some analytics guys that have backed down on their stance that elite running backs are interchangeable. Do you think there's a couple people that I've talked to that believe that elite running backs do matter and they do make a difference in the running game, but how much of that impact, how much is
How
that
much
impact
difference?
worth as far? Yeah,
How much difference is the question?
yeah.
Because I think it's been proven over time that you can run successfully without a superstar running back. It's just how much on top of that, does the superstar running back give you? I don't
Hmm.
think. Let me throw this out. Obviously, we said the Giants prioritized Daniel Jones correctly, but they've given Jones that 2 year window. I don't think they want to go into that 2 year window without Saquon Barkley. I think they want to give Jones every chance, and I don't think they're giving him a full chance. Tiki's stance aside, I don't think anyone would feel like they gave him the full opportunity if they didn't have Saquon in the backfield with him.
No, I agree, and I think Saquon's receiving ability and his ability as an overall weapon and not just a runner comes into that equation, especially when you have Mike Kafka's offense. that have so many creative ways of getting him the ball and creating mismatches for him.
All right. So last thing for you, we've got less than a month. Your gut instinct on whether it gets done or not.
I think it does. I mean, I think there's a human side to this, and I think there is a sweet spot, and it just sounds like Saquon is reasonable in his demands. Obviously he's going to be a push and pull right now, but just the fact that he came out and said he's not looking for a market resetting deal, I think is pretty big. So I think Barkley probably even has a better chance of getting a deal done than Josh Jacobs.
And honestly, I can't blame Saquon for taking this to the deadline, taking it as far as he can take it before he signs the franchise tag, because in no way, shape, or form do I think he's going to sit out the season and sit out a bunch of games. He's going to play. He's not going to walk away from $10 million. I just don't see it. But I can't blame him at all for taking this right to the deadline and seeing if he can squeeze a little bit more out of the Giants. Can you?
No, not at all. I think all elite running backs are going to have to go through similar processes when they get to their second contract. Because teams aren't just going to go out and roll out a fancy deal that meets all the requirements that they want. It's going to be a struggle for these running backs, and it stinks because they take so much of a punishment. Their career is so short, but at the same time, that's just how the structure of the NFL works, and that's just how the market works right now.
Absolutely. So, Ted, thank you very, very much for spending some time. Just why don't you let folks know, where they can find you on social media and what work you might have coming up at The Athletic that they should watch for.
I'm on Twitter at FB_film analysis. You can find me on TikTok with the same name, and I'm on. My article's on Athletic. The article we talked about is on Athletic. I just wrote about Justin Fields and what he needs to do to improve as a passer, and I have a article coming out about a pretty big article about analytics coming out in the next month or so.
We'll be looking forward to that. And Giants fans, thank you as always for listening. Please remember, stay safe out there, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.